Hey everyone, it's the Diplomat, and we are on part 42 of the Chris Watts Discovery read-through. We will begin here on page 1048. In this part, we're going to go through a listing of evidence for forensic analysis. This was all evidence that was sent out for testing. And then we are going to get into 7 pages of notes from the Mistress that were provided to law enforcement. So on the first page is Supplemental 49 by Purcell, FPD, dated September 5th, 2018 at 10:04 a.m., and it reads, On September 4th, 2018, I, Evidence Supervisor Purcell, transferred evidentiary items from the Frederick Police Department to the CBI laboratory located in Arvada for lab testing. I transferred custody of these items from myself to Patricia Lopez of the CBI lab. Together, we verified all items submitted, checking both the item number, description, and printed evidence label against the evidence submission form for accuracy. The cover letter requested testing, the evidence submission form listing all items for testing, and the evidence submission receipt have been added to the case file. Nothing further. Okay, so the next page is also part of Supplemental 49, and it is Purcell as well, and it lists more details about the items that were transferred. On August 13th, a triple homicide of Shannon Watts and her 2 daughters occurred in their Frederick home. I respectfully submit the following items for forensic testing. Items 1, 2, and 3 is king-sized bedding recovered from the kitchen trash of the Watts residence. Items 1 and 3 contain residue believed to be makeup, possibly eyeshadow. Requesting DNA comparison with Shannon Watts, analysis of the residue, and the existence of a, in quotes, face print on any of these items. Item 12 is a blue nitrile glove recovered from the top of the refrigerator located within the Watts residence. Requesting DNA analysis and latent print comparison testing. Items 26 and 27 are black plastic trash bags recovered from a field adjacent to where the bodies of Shannon, Bella, and Celeste Watts were recovered. Requesting DNA analysis and testing for latent fingerprints. Item 28 is a fitted bed sheet recovered from a field adjacent to where the bodies of Shannon, Bella, and Celeste were recovered. Requesting DNA analysis and search for additional evidence. Items 29, 30, and 32 are separate parts of a rake recovered from the top of a clandestine grave from which Shannon Watts was recovered. Requesting DNA analysis and latent print comparison testing. Item 31 is what appears to be blonde hair recovered from upper access opening of the crude oil storage east tank located at well site survey 319, requesting DNA analysis in comparison with the DNA of Celeste Watts. Page 2 of 3. Items 35 to 39 are swabs taken from Celeste Watts during autopsy. Requesting DNA analysis in comparison with the DNA of Shannon Watts and Chris Watts. Item 40 are vaginal swabs from Celeste Watts taken at autopsy. Requesting DNA analysis in comparison with the DNA of Chris Watts. Items 41 and 43 are the DNA card and controlled swabs associated with Celeste Watts that were obtained at autopsy. Item 44 is the left and right hand, in parentheses, degloved, skin with fingernails from Celeste Watts. These items were recovered from the crude oil storage east tank located at Survey 319, requesting an examination for a DNA source and subsequent analysis. Items 47 to 51 are swabs taken from Bella Watts during autopsy, requesting DNA analysis and comparison. Item 52 is vaginal swabs from Bella Watts taken at autopsy, requesting DNA analysis and comparison with the DNA of Chris Watts. Items 53 and 54 are Palmer swabs taken from Bella Watts during autopsy, requesting DNA analysis and comparison. Items 55 and 56 are left and right hand nail clippings from Bella Watts recovered at autopsy, requesting an examination for a DNA source and subsequent analysis. Items 57 and 58 are the DNA card and control swabs associated with Bella Watts that were obtained at autopsy. Items 60 and 61 are clothing obtained from Shannon Watts at autopsy, requesting DNA analysis and comparison. Items 67 and 68 are right and left hand nail clippings from Shannon Watts recovered at autopsy, requesting an examination for a DNA source and subsequent analysis. Items 69 and 70 are palmar swabs taken from Shannon Watts during autopsy, requesting DNA analysis and comparison. Items 71, 72, and 77 are face and anterior neck swabs taken from Shannon Watts during autopsy, requesting DNA analysis and comparison. Items 73 and 76 are control swabs and fingerprints from Shannon Watts obtained at autopsy. Page 3 of 3. Items 88 and 89 are protective seat covers removed from the driver and front passenger seats of Chris Watts' work-issued pickup, requesting examination for trace evidence and subsequent analysis. Item 90 is a roll of black plastic trash bags recovered from Chris Watts' work truck, requesting analysis and comparison to black trash bags recovered from the Survey 319 oil tank site. Items 91 to 93 are trace lifts from Chris Watts' work truck, requesting examination for trace evidence and subsequent analysis. Sincerely, Detective Baumhofer. Okay, so the next page is still part of Supplemental 49, and this is the CBI request for laboratory examination. So this has, this is really a form that's filled out. It's a more formal item by item request for examination. So it's all the items that we just read through, just one by one listed. So I think what we just read was a really good summary of everything. So I'm not going to go through every single item on this form. But if you'd like to come back to it, this form is on pages 1052, 1053, and 1054. Sorry, it also goes to 1055. So this other page is also part of Supplemental 49. It's the evidence submitted receipt. So this is a list of those same items with cross-reference numbers from the CBI and FPD agencies. So again, this just has a full list of all those items in detail that we just read the summary for. So if you want to come back and look at these individually, it's page 1056 and 1057. Okay, next page is Supplemental 50, and this is Baumhofer. Date is September 5th, 2018, and time is 11:17 a.m. This is regarding the Mistress. On September 4th, 2018, at approximately 1 p.m., I met with the Mistress at the CBI headquarters located in Lakewood, Colorado. I was introduced by Kobach, who had interviewed her several times previous to my introduction. I find that interesting that Kobach was with her almost exclusively, and at this point, Baumhofer didn't even meet her yet. I advised the Mistress that I am now her point of contact regarding this case and that Kobach would attend other cases he was assigned to at CBI. The Mistress acknowledged this information and presented me a 7-page typed document she generated containing notes of events she had recalled since her last meeting with Kobach. The events documented reportedly occurred between June 25th through August 13th, 2018. I advised the mistress I would review the notes she provided me along with the reports and recordings from all the previous interviews and contact her with any follow-up questions I may have. The mistress acknowledged my statement and our meeting ended shortly thereafter. Kobach agreed to complete a follow-up interview with the mistress's friend and provide me the reports. While at the CBI headquarters, I took custody of the mistress's cell phone, iPhone 6, which she had previously surrendered to Kobach. I placed the cell phone into evidence and entered the CBI chain of custody form into the case file. Nothing further. Then on the next page, as part of Supplemental 50 as well, it has all of the notes. And here in handwritten, it just says notes received from the mistress on September 4th from Detective Baumover. So it's in different parts here. Each part lists the approximation as to when it happened. So I will give you that time frame for each set of notes. 1. Approximately June 25th or June 26th, 2018. It says in person. So remember that these notes are coming from the mistress. So when I say I'm talking about her. Asked Chris when he and Shannon had decided to separate. He told me late March, early April 2018. I asked if he still lived with her and he told me yes. Said that when she was home he slept in a different room and when she was gone he would occasionally sleep in the master bedroom, but not frequently because the bed was uncomfortable. I asked why he had decided to separate from Shannon. Chris told me Shannon was bossy, in quotes. I asked what he meant by bossy. That's the mistress asking Chris. Chris responded that she was controlling. Said that they really don't argue much though. Said that once many years ago he attempted to stand his ground with her and she told him, in quotes, "Get out of my house," end quote, and made him leave for a night. Chris said that he tried to avoid arguments ever since then. Said that now if him and Shannon disagreed, she would make nasty comments to him and he would just ignore them. I asked if she talked like that in front of his kids. He said yes, my kids started to repeat her words and that is why I wanted the separation. Asked him what he said to his kids when they repeated Shannon's words. Chris said he would tell his children that, in quotes, it was not nice to say that to anybody, end quote. I asked Chris if Shannon was bossy in front of his friends. Chris said that Shannon was all about appearances in all aspects of her life and that in front of her friends she was occasionally bossy, but she would turn it into a kind of joke so that it was more discreet. I asked him how long the communication breakdown between them had been going on. Chris said 6 years and that the last year or two were the worst. I asked him if he had tried to communicate to her how it made him feel when she said mean comments to him. He said he tried to talk to her many times, but it, in quotes, fell on deaf ears. I asked Chris if they had attempted to go to counseling to fix their problems. Chris said no. Chris then said that some nights he would still, currently, hang out next to the bed in the master bedroom with her and would try to talk to her or spend time with her till she fell asleep. Chris tells me that the other reason he was separated is because Shannon hated that he liked to work out and eat healthy. Said that before they decided to separate, Shannon would get mad at him if he tried to go for a run at night once the kids were in bed. Said that Shannon felt it took away from time they should be spending together. Chris said that it was frustrating because he would try to hang out with her and she didn't pay attention to him and would talk on the phone and scroll through social media instead. Chris said that many times he would try to talk to Shannon and she would not acknowledge him, and instead would reply with, in quotes, "Were you talking to me? 'Cause I wasn't listening to you," end quote. Chris told me that Shannon had asked him numerous times to take pictures of them pretending to run together so that she could post it on social media, but she wouldn't actually go for a run with him. Said he started waking up early to lift weights because it was something he did every day and he didn't want his routine to interfere with his time with his kiddos. Said his health was important to him and he wished that she would have been supportive and not upset. Part 2, approximately June 27th, 2018. In person. Chris brings condoms to my house. One box is full and unopened. The second is a set of condoms from a partially used box. I ask Chris why he has a set of partially used condoms. Chris informs me that the condoms he has are from back when he was still having sex with his wife. Told me they had been, in quotes, sitting in a closet collecting dust, and that Shannon probably did not even know they were still there, end quote. Asked why him and Shannon used to use condoms. Chris informed me that Shannon didn't like to, in quotes, get messy. I was curious, so I looked up the expiration date on the condoms and noted that the unopened set expired in late 2022 and the opened set expired in early 2023. I looked up the lifespan of an unopened condom and discovered it is approximately 5 years. Based on my research, I assume these condoms were manufactured in late 2017 and early 2018. 3. On or shortly after July 4th, 2018. This is in person. I complimented his home as being very beautiful. Chris said that he had always wanted a smaller, ranch-style home. Chris said that Shannon insisted on the big house because she liked to throw parties and make it look like they had everything. I asked him what type of parties he was referring to. Chris shook his head left-right and said, in quotes, just expensive parties. Chris then tells me that they had the house built, and the only part of the design that he had any say in was the stonework and the paint color on the exterior of the house. Chris said his mortgage was $2,800 a month, and he was tired of being house broke. I asked why it was so expensive. Chris said that about $500 of the $2,800 was homeowners insurance. 4. July 14th, 2018. This is also in person. Went to his house to drop him off after we visited the Shelby Mustang Museum in Boulder. While at his house, I felt uncomfortable, as if I did not belong there. He had built a beautiful life, and it made me think that there was still a chance for him to fix things with his wife. I told him that I did not think it was fair to Shannon or to me that he was trying to live 2 lives by being in a relationship with both of us at the same time. Said that I think he either needed to fix things with her and let me go, or he needed to move towards trying to finalize his divorce. I told him that I thought his problems with Shannon were fixable, and that he should focus on trying to rekindle the relationship that they had before giving up. He said that Shannon was set on separating, and that so was he. He said when Shannon, in quotes, wants something, she gets her way. I told him I did not understand why they hadn't completed the divorce after all of these months if they were both so adamant about it. If she wanted it as bad as he stated, I did not understand why it seemed stagnant. At this moment, I realized that he might be lying to me about his separation, so I started quizzing him on things he had told me earlier. I asked him when was the last time he was intimate with his wife. Chris told me that day that the last time he and Shannon had sex was in May, but had told me on an earlier date that the two had not been intimate since March or early April. I asked Chris if he used protection when he slept with her because he stated on an earlier date that he used condoms when they had sex. He told me that he had not used protection. I asked him if he was lying about separation. Chris said no. I asked him if he was actively trying to have a child with Shannon since they had unprotected sex. He said no. I left his house. So there's a couple things there in that portion of these notes. One is basically putting all of the responsibility on Chris regarding the relationship when obviously at any time she could have just turned away and that would have ended things with Chris. So this whole thing about her trying to save the marriage by being part of what's breaking up the marriage is very strange. And then also there's something very interesting, I think, there at the end, where she says, I asked him if he was actively trying to have a child with Shannon. So obviously there she is already inquisitive about whether or not he's trying to have a child with Shannon. So it just calls into question when she may have found out about Shannon being pregnant, because this shows that she was already thinking about it, and thinking about it enough to the point where she even asked him about it. So it was something she would have clearly been monitoring. I'm actually finding these notes to be even more interesting than her interviews, because these are things that she had to sit down and think of about herself and write up, right? So they weren't based on questions from the police. So anything that she wrote here in a note, they may have given her guidance, but otherwise, these are things that came to her mind on her own. They weren't things she was responding to like she was in an interview. So it just gives us, I think, a deeper sense of what's in her mind. So this next part says approximately July 15th through July 19th, continued from above conversation. This is between text and person. He tells me that he still wants a separation, but this time he states it is because he has never met anyone like me. Told him that he better not be doing that for me, and that he needs to be leaving his current situation because it is what he and her both felt is the best for their kids and for themselves. We spoke over the next several days and spent a little time together, but I did not want to be intimate with him. I kept telling him that I thought he really needed to fix things with her and to not worry about building a relationship with me anymore. I told him that I had been asked out on 2 dates since I had known him, and that I didn't go on either one, and that I was stood up. I told him that he took the respect and trust from our relationship, because I felt like he was lying. July 20th, continued from above conversation. This is all in person. We attempted to have sex 4 times that evening, and he seems mentally interested, but physically cannot perform. I asked him what the problem was several times, and he kept telling me that nothing was wrong. I told him that he was quiet that day, and it seemed like he had something on his mind. I asked him if what was bothering him had to do with the convo that occurred that previous weekend. Chris said yes, told me that initially he was mad that I had been asked out on dates, but then felt that he couldn't be mad because that would make him a hypocrite. Said what was really bothering him was that I kept asking him to try and fix things with Shannon. Chris told me that he would attempt to fix things with her when he was in North Carolina, and that he didn't want to talk about it anymore while he was home. The sex from then on for the rest of the relationship was greatly reduced from 3 to 4 daily to 1 or maybe 2 times, and was not as intimate when it occurred. Sex no longer happened every day we hung out, but was still very frequent. 5. Conversation while Chris was in North Carolina. This was via phone. Chris tells me that he had a conversation with his buddy Mark, who lives in San Diego. Says Mark informed him that many years ago he believes that Shannon was responsible for a large amount of money that was embezzled from a company that Shannon and Mark both worked for at the time, but that the company was never able to prove who did it. 6. Wednesday, August 8th, 2018. This is in person. Chris stops by the Frederick, Colorado Toyota dealership to pick up an order of touch-up paint and windshield wipers for my vehicle after he gets off work. I pre-ordered the paint several weeks earlier. He brings them to my house sometime between 3 to 4:30 p.m. that day. 7. Saturday, August 11th, 2018. This is in person. Chris told me he didn't have any extra money for a deposit on an apartment. I told him that apartments nowadays were so expensive for rent that the damage deposits have to be fairly cheap because otherwise people can't afford move-in costs. He said that every time he got paid, he just watched his bank account dwindle down. Said he wished he had a way to prevent his disposable income from being spent. I told him that it is possible to divide paychecks into multiple bank accounts, but that if he considered doing that, he would need to make sure he was responsible and that his mortgage and kids and his standard monthly bills were covered first. Told him that if Shannon ever wanted child support, he would still be required by law to show proof of that income even if it was in a second account. I suggested that if he decided to do that, perhaps just contribute a small amount that wouldn't impact his current living situation, but would give him a cushion for the first month's bills when he transitioned to an apartment. But that was his discretion. Monday, August 13th, continued from above, so this is the actual day. Text or phone, it says. Suggested the bank account idea again after he told me that he thought Shannon was gone for the night at a friend's house. Asked him if any money was missing from their bank account. Chris said no. Now this is Tuesday, August 14th, continued from above conversation, via text. Chris told me he opened up a second bank account so he could start saving for an apartment. Now this says 8 Monday, August 13th, so we're going back to Monday now, and this is via text. Chris informs me his family is gone and asks me to call him when I have a chance. When I called Chris, he informed me that the cops were at his house and that he would need to call me back. I was unaware that his wife had missed a doctor's appointment, or that his kids missed school that day, or that her friend had tried to contact her and couldn't, or that he tried to call her and didn't get a response, or that her friend had stopped by the house hours earlier to check on her. I asked him why the cops were there. Chris informed me that Shannon's friend Nicole had called them. Chris says that the media are arriving. I was confused and asked him why they were there. Chris tells me that Nicole called the media. I asked Chris why he believed Nicole would call the cops and the media. He said Nicole wasn't being very nice to him, informed me that she was sitting in her car on the phone with Shannon's mom. I asked how Nicole knew Shannon's mom. Chris informed me that Nicole used to work with Shannon's mom. I asked if he thought maybe Nicole was the friend that was helping Shannon to get away for a day. Chris said no. Why would Nicole be helping Shannon if she's the one who called the cops? I suggested maybe it was to throw them off the trail. He did not agree. Chris asks me if he should talk to the media. I initially told him no, and then suggested that if he decided to speak to them, that maybe he could ask Shannon to bring his kids back. Was uncomfortable with him asking for my advice on the media, so I then asked him what his friends thought he should do about the media. Chris says that his friends believe that it would look bad if he didn't speak to the news and thought that he should make a statement. Now this is also on the day of the murders, but this is via phone. I asked Chris if the cops had attempted to search his friends' houses since he believed that Shannon had gone to stay with a friend. He told me no, they hadn't. I asked him why not, and he told me he didn't know why they hadn't. I asked him why Nicole did not like him. He said he wasn't sure. I asked Chris if Nicole was married and how well he knew Nicole and her husband. He informed me that he didn't know her husband hardly at all. I again suggested that maybe Nicole was the one who was maybe helping Shannon to hide out from him for a while. Chris said maybe, but he didn't really seem like he was entertaining the idea. I asked him if he thought she was with another man. Chris said it was possible, but he didn't think so. I asked if he thought his family was in danger. Chris said that, in quotes, if my kids are with her, then they are safe, end quote. Never said he was worried or concerned about his family unless I prompted the question. Looking back on everything, I am so glad that Nicole showed up that day to check on her friend. 9. Monday, August 13th, 2018, also via phone. Chris says his home camera shows him leaving for work at 5:15 like usual that morning. Chris tells me that his home alarm system notified him that at 9:10 his garage door opened, but that he never received a notification on his phone that it closed again. I asked him if his garage was open when he got home from work that day, and he told me no. I asked Chris if he thought that Shannon left out the garage at 9:10 that morning. He suggested that she either left out the garage door or the back door because there is no footage of her leaving from his front door camera. I asked Chris if there was any sign of forced entry, and he told me no. Told me he didn't want to keep talking about that subject and asked me to talk about something else. So that's where we're going to end part 42, finishing up page 1065. I know I provided some commentary throughout there, but certainly more information that we're learning from the Mistress in terms of the information that she chose to share and how she chose to share it. Some of the information seems negligible, but a lot of it, of course, is structured in such a way that she looks to portray herself as almost as a friend of Chris's that's trying to help him work on his marriage. But obviously she is a huge part of what happened here in terms of continuing the relationship with Chris, which ultimately led to him doing what he did. In loving memory of Shannon, Bella, Celeste, and Nico. And God, please bless the Rusek family. This is the Diplomat. Have a great